Good morning, everybody, guests, speakers, those joining online. It's a true privilege to sit here, and as we gather at the intersection of two monumental forces, the transformational power of education and the boundless possibilities of space. Kindly allow us to thank our co-hosts, UNESCO IESALC, and their expertise and support in this exploration with the possibilities of Interstellar Foundation. Before I begin, I'd like to highlight some of the esteemed representatives that we have here from across the globe, including Partnership Accelerator DSA, Global Center for Pluralism, Global Student Forum, the UNESCO SD4 Youth Student Network, UNESCO IESALC Bilbao Network, UNESCO Chair Youth Ambassador for Okayama University, University One Generation, Columbia University, Accept International, Deep Space Initiative, Future of Space, Higher Orbits Foundation, the Institute for Astronautical Studies, Jane's Planet, SDSN Portugal, Citizens of the Solar System. Thank you for joining us today. I'd like to propose a simple question. Why are young people so fascinated and captivated by space? Perhaps it's their desire to push beyond the familiar, the pursuit of the limitless and the awe-inspiring. This dream is mirrored in higher education, in the journey that people take in higher education. It's driven by a quest for knowledge, for discovery, and the search for one's place in the world. Both space exploration and higher education empower individuals to seek answers, define who they are, and importantly, who they wish to become. Together, these forces push the boundaries of what is possible, not only for individuals, but for humanity as a whole. Each new discovery, each breakthrough in the lab, each launch of a spacecraft builds upon the collective foundation that propels us forward. Every PhD earned, every rocket pad lays the groundwork for future generations to dream even bigger and go even further than we have. At the heart of the 2030 agenda lies higher education, a powerful tool that unlocks human potential, fosters innovation, and drives progress across diverse fields. Yet we must recognize that access to higher education and its opportunities are not available to everyone. Many young people, particularly in developing areas, face significant barriers despite their immense potential. These challenges include limited access to foundational STEM and uncertain pathways to higher education. This is why today's event is so important. This event is a call to action and to discuss possible solutions for these disparities. Together, we will explore the intersection of youth empowerment, higher education, space, pluralism. We'll explore how global collaboration can bridge the divides that separate us and how space can ignite and empower the next generation of leaders. As I conclude, let me leave you with this thought. The farthest objects away from the planets that have been created by human hands is a spacecraft called Voyager 2. This spacecraft was only launched through the collective efforts of countless individuals. Connected to the spacecraft on its journey in the galaxy is a story of humanity. We are here today to start a new story, one that reflects our time and our shared responsibility to create a better world for all. This new story is about us, what we can accomplish together, and at its core, we are a collective species, and this is our story. This is your story. Thank you all for your participation and your support today in our event and as we go forward in this collaboration. Thank you, everybody, again. Thank you to people joining this panel as well. I think if we looked at the question, how can space education powerfully encourage youths in understanding partnerships and collaboration? We really have to think about, to get to space and to do things in space, it's almost impossible. It is an impossible endeavor to do alone. So it's not if it is better to do it with collaboration, it is essential to do it with collaboration. So we have some of my favorite and also incredible people within the space industry. So Mr. Jonathan Jiang, who's a scientist at NASA Jet Propulsion Lab, If anybody has been to NASA, Jet Propulsion Lab, it is quite a special thing. Also at Caltech, Ms. Ideal Gonzalez Saracho, also scientist, also Caltech, NASA ambassador. Ms. Janet Ivy Densing, science and space educator, CEO of Janet's Planets, NASA ambassador. David Brothers, Institute of Astronomical Sciences, an astronaut candidate. I did forget citizens of the solar system for Jonathan as well. So we're gonna start off, Jonathan. Maybe if we could start with you.
Right.
How can space education promote partnerships, do you think, in higher education?
Okay, thank you very much, Nick, for inviting me here. And I would think over the past 3.5 billion years, it's more than 100 million species have appeared on the Earth. We are the only one who invented our way into the space. So over the next 30 to 50 years, for sure, we are going to build base on the moon. The astronaut is going to land on Mars. We are going to start to build a city, maybe on the Mars as well. And that said, our future depends on our younger generations. They are going to manage our future, to define our future. So go back to your question, how space and education promote partnership and over this endeavor. And I would think, first of all, space exploration and space education is cross-discipline. So that means the engineering and biology and economics has to work together. Okay, so this is a cross-discipline and to really encourage the teamwork. Okay, to solve the world scale and problems on that. The second, international and the space education really encourages universities worldwide to work together to share the resources, to solve the world problems, issues for the space education. And so that we really unite the students, unite the faculty members around the world to do that, to share the resources, and to share the project. So in the process, the space education really promotes the partnerships in different fields and different universities around the globe. So this is the way what I'm thinking at. So overall, space education really creates a shared vision for the humanity. It's not just for one university and one student or faculties and one dreams. It put many, many dreams together. So that's the space education is going to do, because space belongs to all citizens around the Earth. Thank you very much. That's my question. Yeah, I answered.
Thanks. And Jonathan, when we met first time, I think 2 years ago, I remember in our first meeting, you had mentioned sort of the importance of any work that we do and the importance of being able to pass that on to future generations and the importance of the work we're doing now being for future generations.
Right.
Is it 120 academic papers that you've written?
More than 300.
300.
300. Okay, thanks very much.
I did it. How can space education be integrated into youth curricula to inspire global collaboration and partnerships?
Thank you. I want to focus on the education part. Not everybody has access to education, and that's my parents. They had very limited education even coming to this country. And this is like a full circle moment for me, because my father used to work at the UN, and he was told to be discreet, quiet, and unseen because he worked on the elevators. And it's kind of cool that I'm being seen, heard, and not discreet. So I want to start on how that we can inspire the next global collaboration, how to integrate it to the curricula. And the heart of the answer is citizen science. So space is not just a frontier, the shared opportunity for all of us to advance as one humanity. But to truly unlock the potential of space exploration, we must engage and empower and acknowledge the diverse, innovative thinkers, which is our future world changers. So we were talking about previously about giving access. So I have created, but I'm not the only one. There's so many out there. So one way is citizen science. So I have my own citizen science project. It's globally used. I actually provide them with all the resources I have so I could give. And what I've noticed, it's been throughout the world, and I noticed this type of experiential, hands-on learning can inspire the students all across the world. And whether they are studying climate change using the soil, or they're collaborating on solutions on how to protect our ecosystem, these students are just not learning science. They're learning that they belong in the scientific community. And they're contributing to something bigger than themselves. They understand the power of collaboration across all borders, all disciplines, all cultures. And I think that's the key here. And that mutual, I think there was someone here, that once there is a cultural norm of understanding, here's how we're going to collaborate. That's why there's SI units, just to make it that. So, always use standardized units. But that's the important part. Now, incorporating citizen science into space education allows us to engage students globally, particularly of the underserved and marginalized communities. So just looking at the data, either what UNESCO provides, less than 2% Latinas in STEM are currently present in the United States. Yo soy puertorriqueña, yo soy boricua. And then globally, females are actually 30% are researchers. That's it. So how do we provide? How can we provide access? So one way is by participating, catching the kids very young, by participating in real world projects, real science projects. There's Zooniverse, a free access so they could study the world, they could study the exoplanets, even potentially identify one, they could even name it, or working on soil science. They can actually make a change. Students are working together regardless where they are in the world. So I know personally that I have students around the world emailing each other saying, hey, did you find this at this latitude? Because you're a similar latitude that I am. And there is, thank God, technology, there is translation. And another cool point is that they will find interventions. They will try to solve really pressing challenges that we face together on this planet and even beyond into space. Now I want to go even deeper. Citizen Science Project also bring in cultural relevant learning, integrating indigenous knowledge and diverse perspectives. This actually helps students understand global interdependence of ecosystems, nations, and economies, which was mentioned many, many times, and I love hearing it over and over again. Space science projects, especially those connected to climate or soil health, actually emphasizes interconnectedness, as they show students that the challenges of space exploration, like the challenges that we currently have with climate change, are global problems that require global solutions. Now, let's talk about partnerships. Citizen science also teaches that diverse perspectives fuel innovation. Whether you're studying space or soil, solutions to the world's biggest problems come when we cross borders and we come together through cultures and disciplines and to discuss. So Scott Page, which is a social scientist, and he actually studies about diversity in teams and how to analyze group dynamics and making decisions. He noticed that on diversity, I just want to make sure I get this worded properly, that has proven that diverse teams are better problem solvers, especially complex problems. And space education offers a perfect platform to foster this type of collaboration early on. Now, it is important that we actually establish more and more collaborative STEAM programs, because they will make at least 60% more students to pursue STEM, pursue social justice. By engaging in multinational citizen science projects, students will learn critical teamwork skills that prepare them for STEM and space research careers. They're learning that the best solutions come when we work together. I know it sounds very Pollyanna-ish, but it's true because I've seen it firsthand, especially with diverse learners who are neurodivergent and they're not able to communicate the same means, but they have a same goal as becoming an astronaut, because I'm one of those. Manifesting. But once they realize they have a common goal, they find a way to communicate. There is the patience. They understand, okay, you're not able to communicate verbally, so let's write it down. Because I have students who were mute. So now let's get into the facts. So according to the Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development, multicultural learning environments increase innovation capacity. According to the International Partnership of Space Education, it is actually shown that between schools and space agencies or industries, that STEM engagement actually increased by 25%. So, and I know personally that with the soil science, and I'm going into my schools in the South Bronx to Africa, to Pittsburgh, to up at North and Svalbard. I've been places. Portugal. They demonstrated that I actually had kids really actively involved and saying they didn't realize that while understanding the soil, how it interacts with the climate is pretty powerful. And if we take that to space and they actually find a way to have life persist in order for us to persist, it could come right back to Earth. So that's the beauty. So what are some of the solutions? Because I can never answer a question with some possible solutions. So I really believe that if we begin, and this is the great start, to build multinational citizen science projects into our curriculum, educators, teachers, administrators, especially in the U.S., please lean into discomfort and get away from the standardized testing and really allow the students to understand you could solve this real world problems. Yes, meet the milestones, but release the reins. We don't have to test multiple choice. Allow the teachers trust the professionals that are in the classrooms and also engage with the professionals in the field. I also want to add hope and expand global initiatives like NASA Artemis program. And hopefully they could create and encourage students and educators to basically create citizen science projects that are based upon the access to the Artemis program. What a great way to inspire students into the future, that knowing that they can actually solve real world problems together globally, and that the differences is just the perk, And I will leave it there. I guess that's
I mean, that's incredible. I think just to start off with belonging and the story of getting here. And I think that, the world is changing in incredible ways, from growing up in apartheid South Africa, seeing the changes of what it means for people to see themselves in other people has been sort of transformative, but we still have a long way to go. We still have a lot of things to do. I think coming back to this event and to sort of what this really is this is an idea to create something which is a future collaboration of projects that's and I think the one of the ideas initially for the event as well is like, let's bring together some of the most exciting scientists, academics, and people in space, and let's put them together with people in education and people in social development. Let's see ideas that we can come up with, but then also let's really look at some actionable things going forward over the next years. And I think citizen science is just a really incredible, important part of that. Janet, what innovation strategies can be employed to make space education more accessible to understand underserved communities, and especially in the global South?
So thank you very much. It is a privilege to be in the room with all of you. Let me first say that I think that the success in higher education and space education starts in kindergarten, because I am very much like a K through 12, like space educator, but it's like, I think space education is a global right. But the first and foremost strategy that can be employed to make space education more accessible to what I like to call untapped communities, especially the global South, is intentionality. It is intentionality in invitation. It is intentionality in access. It is intentionality in exposure. I'll give you an example. We have done the Explore Mars Innovation Challenge now for 2 years. And so some brilliant folks, over half of the entries came from Mexico and Colombia through the amazing efforts of Javier Montiel and Luisa Hernandez. And this wasn't just like a random invitation. We were very purposeful. Javier is leading the way in space education in South America. But here was what made it amazing. After we had the first year, we had this kind of Zoom and we talked about it. And what Luisa shared with tears in her eyes and in her voice said, my students cared less about like the competition more about participation, because for the first time ever, being invited to the conversation, to the table, all of a sudden they felt relevant, like they had a voice in the space industry. And they finished as semifinalists. So they were semifinalists. They didn't win the whole kit and caboodle, but they had radio interviews. They had TV interviews. They felt like rock stars. And we sent them the simplest of Canvas certificates, which they had printed out and were hanging on their walls. So I feel like, again, I love what Michelle said earlier. It is access and exposure, and whether that is in the global South, whether that is in rural America, wherever that may be, we've got to focus on localizing space education to fit the needs and context of these communities. We don't all communicate the same, much like the other gentleman was saying. It's like we need to come to the table with like open arms and hold space for everybody's differences, because we know that the diversity of everything is critical, and diverse perspectives provide incredible innovation. And I want to leverage some low-cost, scalable digital platforms, because that can democratize access to space education. If we have availability of those digital platforms, then anybody can play. And then provide accessible, high-quality professional development for teachers, as well as access to open educational resources, and that can build their local capacity to deliver space education sustainably. And how do we start all of this? I think we start by showing up and asking, how can we help? It is up to every good person, every good human in this room, like Mr. Rogers said, when times are tough, look for the helpers. It is a call out to all of us to be the helpers. And so we must be saying to our neighbors, wherever they are in the globe, how can we help? And it's about more than just opening doors. It's about stepping up and actively supporting these young leaders as they define the future. Here's my very favorite thing. I am for the student above all. When we challenge young people to come up with solutions to real world space and engineering problems that don't yet have answers, we're telling them we believe in your capacity to lead. We respect your genius, and we expect you to be more than capable and up to the task. And it's our job to light that fire of curiosity and give them the freedom to chase down the answers they seek. But our support can't be fleeting. If we're serious about like really making this a global right and global governance, and like having a space education be accessible to all, it is up to us to make long-term sustained investments in their potential. And what that means is our next small step and giant leap. See what I did there? And creating programs that don't just culminate in these one-off events, but provide access to knowledge, resources, and networks that accompany them throughout their educational journey, kindergarten through however far you want to go. Because when we offer and foster international partnerships and mentorship programs, we bridge the gap between aspiration and opportunity. I don't think there's one of us in here. I played astronaut on the playground with my friend Carol, who had walkie-talkies. Live long and prosper. It was like, yeah. So students of today are already change-making and world changers. They're already breaking the barriers of race, religion, gender identity, and ability, ensuring that space exploration becomes a reflection of diversity of humanity. And so I believe so wholeheartedly in the future with this generation. And so I think our model, and this is my call out to all good humans and the helpers everywhere, is that if we want global participation for every region in the world, we must show up, and we must stand up for their ideas. We need to stand by their side. We need to supply access and mentorship, and we need sustained investment in their success for the long haul. And then we celebrate and cheer them on, and then rinse and repeat. And we continually do that. Let's all remember that rockets roar into space using two forms of fuel. One is the liquid in the rocket's tanks. The other is the fuel in the human heart. Space education is an international right, and it is an invitation to dare audaciously together.
I can literally feel my heart refueling. Thank you so much. And I love the idea of intentionality at the beginning as well. And the idea of participation and helping as well. I think coming into this event, with all the planning, you must have sent me at least 10 or 12 messages over the last couple of months going, how can I help? What can I do? I'm here now. And it's just it's an incredible thing to work with somebody as well who is just so prepared to help. And I think it is really a good example because that extends out into institutions, into different areas of the world.
I was up early this morning, Zooming with 7 9-year-old girls in Pakistan who all want to be in astronomy and in astrophysics. And so again, 9-year-olds, right? They're third graders, but it's like I am prepping higher education when I am preparing these 9 and 10-year-olds for a future and how they see themselves in space. So, yeah.
Amazing.
Well, and usually I say yes, because I just figure you never know what's going to happen. So.
And I think, like if you, from the global south perspective, I'm very lucky enough to travel around a lot of Africa, and I've lived in Nigeria and lived in Kenya. And there's just this incredible thing that's happening across, Africa in particular, where you'll walk into an office and you can just see that sort of like 25 to 35-year-old youth is just like incredibly vibrant and incredibly engaging and incredibly intentional. And that's a really exciting time. Okay, David, how can we encourage more youth-led initiatives in space science STEM fields to foster a diverse and inclusive future for space exploration?
Nick, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity and thank the ladies. You guys have put me in a difficult position with your enthusiasm, but you lead me into Nick's question throughout the morning. Diversity in teams, international teams, have been a key concept into capturing youth initiative to increase space exploration and creativity. So I think that is very important, like you said, Janet, capturing them young and then creating an inclusive environment to where they feel that they are a part, and not, like Ideal said, being part of the system, coming up in a system where you're not heard or understood. But to go back to the question, I think that creating educational access to the underrepresented and creating mentor programs that leverage technology and virtual engagement. Those will be keys to helping teams create initiatives. And I'll give you an example. We could create online communities where youth can collaborate with each other and collaborate with other professionals in the field. And that gives them an idea of inclusivity. And I think that is important. Another key to that also is we must also give youth the ability and the opportunity to collaborate and network. All of us here, I work with Ideal. Jan and I've met you before. We all network, and we must give youth the opportunity to collaborate and network. And this can be done. We can have host events where youth can lead conferences, lead events, lead competitions, where youth can showcase projects with the help of industry professionals and mentors to help them feel like they are part of the new space age. Throughout this, this meeting we have had today, I've heard diversity, multinationalism, citizen science, which is the concept that I brought up in. I think all of these are key elements to providing the youth the confidence and the vigor to want to pursue space exploration.
Thank you so much, David. Hey, look at that second. I mean, I think if we looked at, and thank you, I think that the idea of access is incredibly important, especially from a global perspective. And what are the ways to maybe minimize the gaps in that access? And I think, when it comes to technology, that has been probably one of the largest shifts. I was telling friends earlier today, I was living in Nigeria at a time where pre the cell phone, basically you had 120 million people that if they weren't sitting in the same room with each other, they basically weren't able to communicate. There was no landline systems, and there was also no postal service. And then over a period of 12 years, you went from that to 96% penetration of mobile services. And you're in a whole country just talking to each other. And somebody can, might go to school and they're lacking access in terms of books, but if they have Wi-Fi or if they have an internet connection, and most people do have an internet connection with a smartphone, they can go online and they can go, how do I build a car, or how do I do these things? And there is this real sort of transformational thing that's happening. I think just to close, does anybody have any themes for them that kind of came up as things that, that we could see as actionable points as well?
I really like David's idea of why aren't we taking some of the challenges that you have at JPL, like these real things, the Mars sample return? Why are we not taking it straight to the kids and saying, how would you solve this problem? Because we know there's a potential budget issue. We know that there's other kinds of things to consider. So when you're talking about having those student-led conferences, one of the things we did years ago at National Space Society, I had experts in the room, and then kids go around and just do almost like it was speed networking. But it's I think that one of the most powerful things we could do is Explore Mars does their Achieving Mars report, is on one side have the Clive Neals and all of the, awesome bright minds like you all. And then on the opposite side, have students from each and every kind of elementary, middle, high school, and college, and then have them work together across systems, across the globe in solving this. And it would be so interesting to see the ideas that might populate.
Yeah.
Yeah. And sorry.
Yeah, we do have a take kids to work day. You take our kids to work. So the engineer discuss our project, kids sitting around watching. This is a wonderful idea for kids to learn, I think.
Yeah, but I also want to be mindful. That is so true. Right. Definitely having real world challenges and bring in the new brains. Oh, forget about that. Absolutely. But I also want to make sure that the language is there. So I remember as Dr. Shabalala from South Africa, he was saying that there's already a limited access because of language. You need to know English or something just to even step in the door. So really making that effort to have some type of bilingual system and culturally acknowledging where the culture is, what is the language, and really invest for them to know, you belong here. We just have to figure out a better way to communicate. And I don't want you to come to me. I come to you. Exactly what you said, because we want to respect every point of humanity, because it is a fact that we are in the space age. It is a fact that humans are going to be living up in space and beyond our solar system. What will be our human culture? And no one should be excluded, because due to our planet right now, all of our diversity is what helps this planet grow and die at the same time. But we could do better. And what a great way to have a new platform, like a new start in space, which we can be brought back to Earth. We cannot forget where we came from.
Thank you. It does also remind me of this little nugget, is that we were probably the last generation that looks at a moon that doesn't have a permanent base of people there. So think about space, the International Space Station, there's always people in space right now. And we are the last generation that looks at a moon. As long as we don't totally destroy ourselves as a species, there will always be people on the moon. Amazing. Thank you.
Yeah,
thank you very much. Thank you for allowing me to start. I wish I had started second when we first started, because your breaking of the ice definitely broke the tension. Firstly, I'm also very glad that this meeting's being recorded, because I think we have come up with some incredible ideas, and the people that have spoken have really put a lot of thought into, firstly, the way that they do these things in the world, and a lot of fantastic ideas. So I'm also glad that there are going to be AI transcripts, and we can figure out some themes from those. And I think the purpose of this whole event really is to start looking at what the next steps are, what's the actionable points, and what we're going to do going forward. And the real sort of idea, with this as well is around a workshop. And again, also one of the reasons why we invited the speakers here and the people participating is for their expertise and for the ability for us to work together to basically look forward. So currently, and this might change as things do change, obviously, we're looking at doing this workshop in South Africa, bringing people from around the world, and obviously working with local content and creators in South Africa to move this forward. One of the core ideas with this is an idea around a space club, the idea of connecting high school students going into higher education with people within higher education institutions. Every young person that I have met in Africa, no matter which country they're in, if they are into engineering, which is part of sort of my field, they know what MIT is, and they know what these prestigious places of higher education are. And there is the idea that, by working with these institutions and with other institutions, both local institutions in regions and global institutions, that you really are going to be inspiring young people to be able to do more, and also showing them the pathways of what is possible. We're going to get into the fireside chat in a bit as well, but I think from our side, the idea of representation. So if we think about the Space Club as one of the maybe the modules that we think about in the Space Club is, what does food security look like for astronauts on Mars? And this is a way to get young people's attention into thinking about that stuff, and then to take it further and say, what does food security look like in Uganda? And how has food security in Uganda been solved for tens of thousands of years? To get young people in these places to go out into their communities and to be able to find these solutions. And I think for far too long, we've looked at indigenous solutions that have worked for sometimes millions of years as if it doesn't look a certain way, it's not as valuable. And the idea is to get young people across the world to realize that no matter where they are, there have been valuable solutions that have been used to solve problems for hundreds of thousands of years. That's
Well, well, first of all, thank you very much. I think it is the last time you're going to hear from me during this event, I think. So thank you very much. I think that it has been really, so far, and it's going to continue with the fire chats, an inspiring event. Let me just share with you a few ideas. Some of them are going to be just rephrasing what Nick has said, but some others are going to connect up with the recent past. I think that someone already referred to the Second World War, and I just wanted to mention that UNESCO, the organization we are working for, was created in 1945, just immediately after the Second World War. And we still keep the same motto, which reads as follows: since wars begin in the minds of men, it is in the minds of men that the defenses of peace must be constructed. Mm-hmm. Well, I don't know to what extent we should say men and women today, but certainly at that time it was only about men. Okay, and I think it's very important to realize that UNESCO has, as a member of the UN family, has chosen the path of working in three key areas. One is culture. How important it is for a country to have, a site that becomes a patrimony of the humanity. The second one is education, and we're talking about higher education, certainly. But the third one is science, because science is, in a way, is a universal language that helps us to understand the world we live in. Of course, there are many ways of understanding the world, but science is one of them. And I think that I have heard the references to citizen science, which I think is crucial. And one of the things
that we hear constantly from companies all over the world, including also the global south, is that companies expect university graduates to have more than the skills, in a way, attached to their disciplines. They expect 3 critical skills. One is problem solving. The second one is communication, public communication. And the third one is teamwork. Now, when I was hearing the range of activities you were describing, as you did, Nick, I was thinking that the space journey, as we used to say, is really a window of opportunity to promote, among other things, not only the knowledge of the space and the discovery of new scientific grounds, but probably a way of helping young people to develop, among others, these 3 skills. Once again, problem solving, communication, and teamwork. Now, I was asking to myself when I was hearing what you were saying, what's the added value of this commitment to space in comparison to other, I would say, issues and problems that are planetary? Remember, we recently had the COVID-19, which was a challenge. We have the climate challenge. No one would say that you could expect to find a solution within the boundaries of your frontiers, of your national frontiers. We have to hope that there will be a global contribution of universal science to address those challenges. Now, someone has said, I don't remember who, sorry, so many people, so many panels, and I didn't take note, but someone referred to I think there was a Portuguese scientist who said that the space is still, or can still be seen as a common good for all of us. And I would add to that it could be a participatory common good, and for the time being, it has no proprietor, okay, which I think is something that we have to keep in mind. Now, coming down to Earth, so to say, in terms of things that UNESCO could contribute and hope to develop jointly with Interstellar Foundation, 4 things I would say. One is we have seen throughout the day how important it is to empower youth voices. I think that many of you have said that. We have so many things to learn, not only in terms of making sure that science makes progress, but also in terms of helping those now children and youth really to become global citizens. I think that's the first point. And we're doing that already so much as we can at UNESCO. Second, something that has been mentioned in passing is South-South cooperation. I think that certainly we know where science is being created. Okay, we know that. But you have to know as well that according to UNESCO data, of all international aid going to higher education in the global south, from the north to the global south, only 17% remains in the country. 83% is in terms of scholarships for students going from those countries in the global south to the global north. Okay, so to some extent, we need to develop, as Nick has suggested, forms of partnership between, the universities and higher education institutions, research centers in the global south with the global north in a way that is not simply exploiting the talent that the global south already has. Okay, so we have to be more equitable when it comes to that. Third aspect, which I think is also important, and I'm glad to see that in this room we have more women than men, which is really unusual. Really unusual in a conversation that talks about, science and space. So I'm so glad to be here. But certainly we have a gap, okay? And this gap of female participation in science, and I guess space science as well, is really a gap that needs to be addressed. UNESCO is also promoting the engagement of women in science, but we face really, really difficult cultural barriers, okay? So whatever contribution, even in terms of emulation, I mean, seeing here female astronauts or instructors, whatever, scientists, professors, is really, really a nice opportunity to make sure that girls in the global south see, okay, I could be not only an astronaut, but also a female astronaut, or a female science. And finally, Nick has also referred to that, we have plenty of the indigenous knowledge. Okay, I remember myself over the past years where I have been living in Latin America. I have been in touch with the Inca the Maya, the Mexica cultures, and you realize how amazing the knowledge of the astronomy was in these cultures. All that has been lost, unfortunately. But still, there are remainings of that indigenous culture that talk about different approaches to the universe. And I think that there is so much to learn, because remember that one of the topics we are discussing today is precisely pluralism. And it's not only about the pluralism in political ideas, but it's also the pluralism in ways of understanding our world. Okay, so we have a common good in front of us. We have the opportunity, to build partnerships. Let's go for that. Thank you.
Virtually. Yeah. Super. Into the next, straight into the next panel. Fireside chat. Amazing.
That's great.
Before we get started, I just also would love to thank Elian and Lily for not just the event, but for just the incredible work that you guys do, and the incredible problem-solving partnership that has been working with you to organize everything. We faced many challenges, and we have shifted and we've moved, and it's been just incredible. And I really appreciate just the effort. And they were up at I saw their last message. I was asleep. I saw their last message. I think 12 o'clock.
Because much like spaceflight, it's possible, right?
Oh yeah. It's quite incredible. So in terms of this fireside chat, so this is kind of getting into basically the messages that we send to space. What should be included in those messages, and specifically how can higher education be participating in how we basically put these messages together. So I'd watched a documentary about 3 years ago, and the first people I thought of when I thought of who would it take to build messages to go to space was people in higher education. It was professors, it was people who had worked on the problem, but it was also people from an incredibly diverse section of higher education. So, we've got, from linguistics to the sciences, as you would think, but there's also, we think about what is communication. So that is the, how do we communicate over vast timescales? How do we communicate in a way that whoever finds the message, if they have absolutely no reference of us or have no context of who we are, how would they understand our message? So there's the communication part, but then there's also how do we represent ourselves? And maybe even more importantly, how do we want to represent ourselves? Do we want to represent ourselves just the maths and the physics and the stuff that we know, and we're very good at solving these problems, or we've built AI, and because whatever we say now is going to look very, very silly probably in 50,000 years anyway. Or do we want to represent the creativity and the arts and the things that make us human? And I think the last 3 years and just working with these incredible scientists and academics in different institutions in higher education, I think almost the most important thing for me that I think the project holds is the ability for people to explore the idea themselves. If you think about what you wanted to send into space, and you start to explore what is important, what does it mean to be human, what are the things that, I hate using the word define us, but in some way help to explain who we are, it's an incredibly fulfilling exploration. And I think it also comes back to maybe even something Daniel said earlier, that we're kind of amazing as a species. We have an ability, and we have done some really incredible things to all get here. It is very imperfect, and we have so much work to do. But from a generational perspective, we are better than we were 50 years ago or 100 years ago. And I'm gonna. That's a long ramble to get us to the first question. I did want to sort of open it up to say, when we think about sending messages to space, what sort of comes up as something that for you is important?
Difficult to say, but the message I would send would be something as simple as, look at you. That would say, that would probably be the most important message they would send. I would consider that from space, we should send the message that we are here. Consider us a mirror of your capacity as human being, So look at yourselves. That would be my message.
I love this. Okay, so I'm going to open it up to the group. Does anybody want to maybe start off? Oh, sorry, I asked this. Sorry, I'm being a very bad host. I forgot to do actual introductions as well. So, again, Mr. Jonathan Jang, scientist, JPL, over 300 academic papers. I listened the last time. Jacob Blassus, who is the executive director of the Global Student Forum. If I'm not mistaken, one of the largest student forums in the world. Yes. Fantastic. Just a quick one. Could you give us just a brief overview of the Global Student Forum?
Of course. So the Global Student Forum is an umbrella organization of student organizations. There's 218 national and international organizations from 135 countries and territories. And it's encompassing around 5,900 local student organizations across the world. And the idea is really, can we bring student organizations together across the world and bring their capacities together and stand together as a broader student movement? Because there's so much work going on with students having a voice at their local institutions. And that's been for many, many years. And it's really, in some countries, it's in national laws that, of course, students need to be part of shaping education, and other places is still in development. And the idea of the Global Student Forum is, can we bring those experiences into global spaces also? Because some of our members have been incredibly powerful at bringing student voices into decision-making spaces at regional levels, like in the European Union or in the African Union with the European Students' Union and All Africa Students' Union, bringing those perspectives into it. So we always go back and say, can we bring perspectives from that local experience all the way into global decision-making spaces? Because there is that growing recognition of the value of young people's voices in shaping the future. But if we are to do that, we cannot just say, I feel like I know a young person. Let's invite them in and I think I have a daughter. Let's make her part of decision making. We can't really do that. If you want to meaningfully engage young people, we need to say, okay, how are they bringing the broadest representational perspective into the decision making processes? So that's what we spend a lot of time doing.
Amazing. Thank you. I think that gives much more context. And somebody who's taught me a lot about context, Professor Karen Lewis, who is the Professor of Philosophy of Language at Columbia University. Also somebody that I've worked with a lot in creating messages, so actually putting messages together that go to space. And why, when I'd sent you this first email, what kind of as a professor of linguistics, what kind of brought you to say, cool, let's figure out a way to send messages into space?
Sure. So thanks, Nick, and thanks for having me here. So when Nick reached out to me from when he was starting up the Interstellar Foundation to see if I'd be interested in joining, as somebody who thinks about language a lot, and I think how to communicate to an audience that's potentially intelligent extraterrestrials and not even humans, these messages that are going to go out into space, and everything went amazingly well. Off chance was picked up by intelligent extraterrestrials, but that's the aim. So we want to be interpretable by them. But even if not, these messages that'll be out there for hundreds or thousands of years and may likely be later received by distant future humans or the descendants of humans. How to make that kind of message so that's actually understandable by the intended audience really is a philosophical question. Right? It's a question that goes right to the heart of the things that I like to think about in my research in philosophy of language. It's a question of sort of what is meaning? How do we communicate with each other? How do we interpret each other? So a lot of my research has to do with the ways in which context. So Nick always says, I use the word context like 20 times at every meeting we have. That's just my role on the team. So I do a lot of research about context and how context affects our interpretation. And if we think of these kinds of messages that we want to send into space, they're essentially contextless messages, which makes it very hard to interpret them. And when we interpret each other, we already talked today about how hard it is to interpret each other across cultures, right? But we still have shared cognitive architecture, like our brains are fundamentally the same. We have some shared human experience. When we're sending something out to distant human descendants or ETI, we're sending it out to people or to beings who potentially interpret it, who have no shared experience at all with us, possibly very different cognitive architecture. Furthermore, when we talk to people or even do experiments in animal communication, we have other kinds of contexts, like what situation are we in? What's the behavior that we're observing? And we can use that to help interpret each other. They have none of that. And so part of what we think on this team, that question that really interested me, is how to send a message that creates its own context so that it's essentially understandable by the recipients. And I want to say one more thing, just to throw in the philosopher Ludwig Wittgenstein. I don't think I've ever brought this up in our meetings, but he once said, he's a philosopher of language, and he once said, if a lion could speak, we wouldn't understand it. And I don't necessarily agree with that, but his point was that even if we could somehow have like a translation between lion language and ours, our shared experience of our lives and what a lion's life is like, so different that we just would not be able to interpret whatever the lion said. And so that's something I think about a lot when I'm doing these kinds of messages, to think like lions have more in common with us in some ways than extraterrestrials do. And so how would I make this? But there's other ways in which extraterrestrials might have more in common with us. And thinking about those ways as a starting point for this kind of message.
Fantastic. Thank you. Jonathan, so, my first ever academic paper that was published was with Jonathan, my one and only academic paper. One of his 300. And I think even since we started working together, I think what you've always been able to do incredibly well is sort of look at the intergenerational dialogue, right, in the way that you brought people together to essentially form these very sort of strong partnerships sort of in these teams. And I think, I'm not sure how many people were on the team that we'd looked at for the Beacon in Space message, but how have you, or why do you think that it's important to sort of really look at these intergenerational dialogue?
Right. And at the Caltech, I have about 20 people, half a student, and as young as they are 13, 14 years old. And so to work on this together and to create a message to be sent out to the deep space. And I think what message we want to send truly represent who we are. Okay. We can somebody send me an image about the military parade, and say people, the military parade to show humans are very aggressive. Or somebody send me an image, a group of families, and having dinner together, to share some family moment. Or we want to create a message. We're truly trying to make that, two students and so from Caltech. One is from Palestinian, one is they hug together to say we are friends. Okay, these are powerful images, to say who we are. We as humans, we are weakened about 1 million years ago. Our ancestors work on the earth. They invented fires and simple tools. They invented agricultures, all the way to invented mathematics. They discovered physics, and all the way to invented rockets into space. And at the same time, we invented nuclear bombs, okay, the biological weapons, maybe the climate change. The way the climate change is because all the energies we use, the food, everything from the sun. Our technology have advanced to a level. The energy from the sun is not enough. So we are using up the energy from the sun millions, 100 millions ago, provided to us in terms of fossil fuel and coal and natural gases, to the point the carbon dioxide level is shooting as high as it's accelerating. So we are destroy the environment in the next 100 years or so. So we have a choice and to survive. Okay, survive does not mean 100 years from now. Survive means thousands of years, maybe millions of years into the future, so we can reach for the stars. At this point, and what message we want to send to represent humans? And so at the Caltech, we have a weekly meeting to discuss, and everybody decided to create a 10-second video clips to bring 100 people from every corner on the earth to speak 100 different languages to say we are friends. In English, we say we are friends. In Chinese, we say 我们是朋友. In Japanese, we say 私と小田は友達です. And in South Korea, say 我们亲姑娘. In French, in Spanish, to say we are a friend. We want to record that video clips on the beach, in the forest, on mountaintop, in the city, in the countryside, to showcase not only diversity of the human species and also diversity of the earth. So that will be a powerful message to showcase we are from. So of course, somebody said, John Lomberg said, do we want to send out a negative message to be balanced, to say who we are? And I remember Carl Sagan decided in Golden Record, we only send positive messages. So as we want to do it, that's for the education purposes, to have the young kids to know what is the positive side of human species. Okay, we want to be the positive side. We want to against the dark side of human species, so people can learn. Oh, that's the model, that's the example to represent human being as education purposes. So that is the my answer to your questions. How to bring that message into space.
Fantastic.
Thank you. Yeah.
And again, I think just also working together on these messages, I think it becomes quite clear as well that it's the importance of the message to ourselves.
That's right. Yeah.
So, these are very small messages on very small spacecraft going very, very far, and there's lots of space out there. But the transformative thing that happens when we work on these messages is quite powerful. That we really do kind of get into what it's trying to get into, what it means to be human. I'm wondering, from the perspective of how maybe even sort of UNESCO, so even when we first started, one of the key organizations that we wanted to work with was with UNESCO, and we started working with the UNESCO archiving team. So Eng and different people on the team, and I actually met with the head of UNESCO archives yesterday. And we often talk about things like, we've put constitutions onto our last message. We put every constitution in the world.
That's right.
And we then think about how constitutions have changed. And when we're trying to sort of describe a species of humans, we think about, what are the interesting things, and whenever somebody finds this message, what would they want to find interesting? And I'm wondering sort of where you think, sort of UNESCO and the United Nations, where I'm not too sure exactly. I should have better thought the question. I've got the statement. I just can't figure out the question now. But yeah, where do you see sort of maybe UNESCO's place and not necessarily in the doing of a message, but from a philosophical perspective, where UNESCO holds in the world and how that's kind of explains who we are as humans.
Yeah. I think when you first asked the question about what message I would send to the outer space, I thought of a message that could be read from the Earth. Okay. So I think, and somehow, what you described as an initiative, those 100 friends, probably unknown friends.
On different countries, different race.
Exactly. Yeah. Is in itself, the process of building those messages is in itself a learning opportunity for the humanity. So I don't know whether those messages are going to be seen or watched by everyone, anywhere. But I think that the process of acknowledging that we have in our hands a common future, it is where UNESCO and probably other UN agencies come to the play. I think that we are the ones expected. I don't know if we do that in a proper way, but certainly one of the missions of UNESCO is to make sure that the cultural patrimony of humanity is preserved. Okay, and we are seeing many cases where that patrimony is being destroyed. Second point I'm going to mention as well, when you talk about friends in different places, I was thinking about as well as not only, I would say different gender identities that are so part of the work UNESCO.
That's right. Yeah.
Is, bringing those differences on up to the table. I think that this is really important. So the third, I would say, message here is that we grow as a species. And I think that UNESCO is also preserving our past. And when I mention the UNESCO Constitution, I'm not 100% sure if I would send that Constitution to the outer space because it talks about war, and I would be rather in favor of you just making sure that we send a positive message. And that's why I would like to conclude by simply saying that no matter if sometime in the near or distant future, someone reads or watches those images, I think that mobilizing the resources for, different communities, countries, identities to work together in what is the image that, and I know I acknowledge the reference to Gothic, okay, but what's the public image that we would like to have as a humanity? That's already, a positive aspect, no matter if it's going to be useful for everyone or not. I think that the process in itself is really a very positive one, and UNESCO would like to be part of that. I'm pretty sure.
Fantastic. Jacob, as an executive director myself of a foundation that is far smaller and far less moving pieces and far less the need, which I'm sure, as you are the executive director of sort of one of the largest global networks. In terms of sorry, I've lost the question again. Yes. Okay. So as the executive director of one of the largest global networks, unity, cooperation, and pluralism, how do you guys facilitate this within the different organizations that are involved? And what do you think are the ways to improve the way that we can be looking at unity and cooperation between stakeholders, between organizations, between individuals, to come to some sort of a common goal?
I think one of the key things for us is we don't go around and assume that, our whole membership agrees on everything. That would be incredible and weird and strange and completely against everything that humanity is. Because I think it is really about that diversity of different perspectives and of experiences and cultures. And when we try to bring organizations and students together across the world, we always say that, we can bring us together on these things, but we need to be able to handle that we disagree on things, and we disagree fundamentally on a lot of things. And I think that is what makes our organization work. And I think for the greater humanity in this question, that's also a lesson that we have to learn, because we need to become comfortable with having many different perspectives on things. And that is it's a core human thing. We can come together in our hope for a better future and our hope for a shared humanity. But if we are just thinking that we can reach some kind of everyone believing the same thing, everyone believing the same kind of experiences, same kind of perspectives and things, then we will never be successful because, and I think it would be counter to our core mission. And I think in the Global Student Forum, there's a lot of discussions always, and I think that's really our strength. Now, with everything going on with Israel and with Palestine and in the whole region, we see that because we have member organizations in all these places, and they come from very different perspectives, and we need to be comfortable having those conversations. So I would say now in these days of the Summit of the Future, I know that a lot of the negotiations around the big kind of outcome declarations are really, really struggling here in the end, because people need to they need to come together, and they know they need to come together, but it's so difficult. And are we willing to move on those small things? Are we willing to come together? Are we willing to find those kind of ways of phrasing that includes everyone? And that's like a matter of perspective. And I think it's a thing that we're still trying to learn, both like us as students, but I think greater as countries and as a shared humanity. And I think there is that thing that when we eventually meet a species from another place that comes with a completely different perspective, are we then ready to have the conversations? Have we grown comfortable in our diversity? Maybe at that moment we would really quickly get comfortable. But I would make the case that we should do that before, because it is the direction that we need to go into to actually make it possible.
I woke up in a sweat one night after about 6 months of working on this project, thinking that we're starting this project and we're going to do this thing, and if aliens do land, we'll probably be like the people that know the most about how to speak to them, and we'll probably have to be like drawn into meetings. But I think it's a really sort of interesting idea in terms of like from an agreement perspective, because I think, you know, putting messages together, we fall into the same thing. It's you know, there's very much a subjective thing of which Bruce Springsteen's song is the best. And if you can only send one, you know, which one do you send? And not necessarily Bruce Springsteen, but like all types of music. And coming to agreement, I think, is very